Okay, so we've started the book, Devi, the Devi Bhagavatam retold, and we've covered the first 9 chapters, which are many of the stories that we've already read in the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam. But, and so we hear about one of the first stories that we hear is how Vishnu lost his head. And but before that, in that story, he's very exhausted, and that's why he falls asleep. So do you remember the story where he falls asleep on his bow, and the other gods come and they're afraid to wake him up, so they have the white ants, or the termites, I think they call it in this book, chew through his bowstring, and the bowstring, I guess, goes like, because it's a huge bow. And exactly, and it cuts off his head, and his head goes flying. One thing it says into the Sagara ocean or sea, and so it turns out well, because it was all done because Lakshmi cursed him, said, "May your head fall off," but that she was being influenced by the tamasic, the lower guna, because he had actually a job to fulfill. There was a demon that was tormenting all of earth and the heavens, who had been given the boon that he could only die by somebody who had a horse's head. So when they were all distraught over the head god having no head, their guru said, "Settle down, and this is all meant to be. So go out and find the first horse's head." And with the divine architect Vishwakarma, organized getting the horse head on Vishnu, and then he was able to go and defeat the demon. But of course, in the Naimisa Vana, all of these people are so interested in every word that gets told. So they said, "Well, what did you mean Vishnu was so tired after battling the demons for 5,000 years? Tell us that story." So this is the story that I'm going to read to you from this book, the Chandipat, by Swami Satchidananda Saraswati, because he has such a, I would say, large view, and also helping us realize that this really is all going on inside of us. You know, we think it's all out there, the big wars between the demons and the gods, but really he references it as what goes on inside of us. So when we're at peace and doing kind and uplifting things, that's when we are one with the gods. But when these thoughts come in, and the thoughts that we're going to be battling against today are called too much and too little. I mean, they have Indian names. It's Kataiba and Badu and Kataiba. So when the thoughts start coming up and the energy goes into our thoughts, then our minds go crazy. And that's the battle, when we want to try to come back into a more centered space. So I'm sure you've all had that experience when all of a sudden you start thinking about, maybe you're sitting at your altar doing your puja or your meditation, and all of a sudden you start thinking about, I do have this, something I have to make to bring to group, to this class this afternoon, and tomorrow I really should be getting some new clothes because I don't have enough clothes to wear to my yoga class. And really, I should be getting a better burglar alarm because I've been accruing all this money, and now I need to protect my money. So this idea of too much or too little, I don't have enough yoga clothes, so I better get busy. Or I have too much. I have a lot of, nice things in my house, so I better get a better burglar alarm or something like this. So these are the kind of thoughts that pull us from what our morning practice is, particularly during morning practice or evening practice. And these are the wars. So that's what we're going to read. So, Randy, we're doing the Chandi Pot right now. Did you get your book yet? Okay, not a problem. I'll be reading it. So, we're going to
page?
one
What page?
130, I believe. Yes. So the bottom of 130, where it says the Rishi said. But before that, the setup in this book is that there is a king who has been ousted from his kingdom, partially by ministers who were, liars and thieves and other people like that. So he was ousted from and he went wandering in the woods, and he found this guru's place, this ashram where he was allowed to stay. So that's the Rishi. Meanwhile, there's another gentleman who had been ousted from his family. So he was a businessman. So one was a king, one was a businessman, because he was more interested in spiritual things and his family wanted more material things. And so they called him cheap and not providing properly and so they sent him away. So they end both up at this Rishi's ashram. And it's a beautiful place and it's very peaceful, and the guru is there helping them, teaching them. But still their minds are going crazy. It's like it's so peaceful, but they can't meditate. They keep thinking about, the king keeps thinking about his kingdom. Even though they were so bad to him, he's thinking about his, are they going to be okay? Are my horses being fed properly? And meanwhile, the family man is thinking about his family, even though they were terrible to him as well. And so they go to the Rishi basically and said, why can't we just appreciate this beautiful place and do our meditation and get on with our lives? Why do we keep going back to our old story? So that's where we're going to begin. So at the bottom of page 130, it says, the Rishi said, "O great light of luminous splendor, all that lives has knowledge of objects perceived by the senses. But the objects of the senses are perceived differently by all beings. Some beings are unable to see in the day, while others are unable to see at night. Still others have the capacity to see equally well in the day and the night. It is true that humans have a capacity of understanding, but not only humans. This knowledge is common to all animals, whether beasts of the forest or birds of the air. All living beings possess this understanding just as beings. Then just as humans, the capacity of understanding exists in all animals. And this is a general principle that the understanding of the two is alike." Look at those birds. Though they have knowledge, because of attachment, they are ignoring their own hunger and are busy putting food into the mouths of their children. But supreme among men, humans are different because they are desirous of obtaining reciprocal assistance from their children in their need. Can't you see the desire in their greed? People are hurled into the whirlpool of attachment and the pit of illusion by the great measurement of consciousness, which is his translation of Mahamaya. So we've been talking about Mahamaya, the great creative force, who pushes us all into this creation with all the many karmic things that we experience. By the great measurement of consciousness, Mahamaya, who is the cause of the circumstance of all objects in the creation and of their relationships. For this, there is no need to wonder. The consciousness of the universe, the Supreme Lord, is put into sleep in divine union. So now he's talking about Lord Vishnu. By the great measurement, and therefore the world is deluded by her. She, the supreme goddess, the great measurement of consciousness, attracts the perceiving capacity of all sensible beings with such force as to thrust them into the ignorance of egoistic attachment. The universe is born from her, the perceivable world with all that moves and moves not. And it is she who, after satisfaction, bestows upon humans the blessing of liberation. It is she who is the ultimate knowledge, the cause of the liberation of consciousness, the eternal existence. And she is the cause of the bondage of consciousness to objects and their relationships, the full and complete supreme over all sovereigns. So the king goes on, the king says, revered one, who is that goddess, the great measurement of consciousness, of whom you speak? Tell us, O wise one, of the actions by which she is known. What is the cause of this goddess? What is her intrinsic nature? What of her birth? All this I wish to hear from you, O most excellent amongst the knowers of the one self-existing being. So the Rishi says in response, she is eternal, and the gross world and all the individual phenomenon in it are her visible forms. In many ways, she is manifest. Hear of them from me. Notwithstanding that she is eternal and unborn, nevertheless, when divine ones perform actions for the attainment of this cause, she becomes manifest in this world. At the end of the period for manifestation, when the gross world was indistinguishable potentiality, the revered divine Lord, the universal consciousness, Lord Vishnu, rested at the end of infinity in the sleep of divine union. Then from the dirt of the ears of this perceiving capacity of Vishnu arose two terrible thoughts known as too much and too little. And their other names are Madhu and Kataiba. They were ready to slay the divine creative capacity, who is Brahma, who is seated in the lotus blossom in the navel consciousness. The creative capacity, the ruler of beings, seeing the approach of the two thoughts and the causer of being indifferently asleep in divine union, then with one-pointed attention, he began to praise divine union from his heart. So what's happening is, do you remember this story where Vishnu, we read that about Vishnu lying on the big people leaf in this huge, immense ocean at the time after Pralaya, and it's about time for another kalpa to begin. And Vishnu comes out of a lotus from his navel, and Vishnu is sitting there meditating too. And this is when they heard the Divine Mother speak and all this kind of stuff. But meanwhile, out of the ears of Vishnu came this wax and these two thoughts. So even Lord Vishnu, with all his greatness, has these thoughts of too little, too much, or too much. It's like, who are you, and what are you doing? And How are you going to prove that you are the head of the gods? And all these kind of questions. So these kind of thoughts came out, and they were ready to battle, first of all, with Lord Brahma. And Brahma was afraid because Vishnu was actually asleep in yoga nidra. So he was still at one with the whole divine. And so seeing this, even though Brahma tried to wake up Vishnu a couple of times, seeing this, that he was under the influence of yoga nidra, under the influence of Mahamaya, or he decided, I better praise her so that she will leave Vishnu so he can wake up and defend me. So for the purpose of awakening Vishnu, the revered one of brilliant light, Lord Brahma extolled the ruler of the universe, the creator of the perceivable world, cause of evolution and devolution. Goddess asleep, the unequaled energy of consciousness. Brahma said, you are oblations of I am one with God. You are oblations of union with ancestors. So he's calling her O Swaha, O Swada. You are oblations of purity and the consciousness of all sound. You are the eternal essence of all. And you are the time of prayer, which is Sandhya, which we read a lot about. You are the bearer of light. You are the goddess above all beings born. The universe is sustained by you, and the perceivable world is created by you. You protect what you create, O divine goddess, and you destroy it in the end. As the creator, you are the form of the creation, and as the form of circumstance, you are its maintenance. Then at the conclusion, as the form of dissolution of perceivable existence, you are the almighty measurement of being. The great knowledge, the great measurement, the great intellect, the great recollection, the great ignorance too, and your ladyship, the great goddess and the great source of strength. You are nature and the three qualities that you manifest in all. And he goes on to extol her for her many, she has 1,008 names, of course, but he's not saying them all, but he does go on and on. He says, you bear the conch of vibrations and the bow of determination and other weapons as well. You are mild and gentle and the ultimate of attractiveness and incomparable beauty. Above and beyond that, and even again superior, you are the supreme consciousness. Whatsoever exists in thought or perception, whether true or untrue, the energy of everything is in you. Then what can be sung in your praise? If he who is the evolution, circumstance, and devolution of the perceptible world is subject to the sleep. So we're talking, he's saying if Vishnu is subject to the sleep that you have caused, then what can be sung in your praise? You cause the maintaining capacity and the dissolving capacity and myself as well to wear bodies. So he's saying here, you caused Vishnu and also Shiva and even myself, Brahma, to wear bodies. Hence, for this reason, and for this cause, who has sufficient ability to sing your praise. O divine goddess, you and your heavenly and bounteous manifestations have been extolled. Cause the ignorance of egotism to fall upon those two thoughts. So now he's asking her to do something to this Madhu and Kataiba. He says, please cause the ignorance of egotism to fall upon those two thoughts, so difficult to understand, too much and too little. Awaken the consciousness of the master of the world, Vishnu, and rouse him from his sleep. Thus praised by the pious worshipper, Lord Brahma, the goddess of rest, in order to awaken the awareness of Vishnu, to kill too much and too little. She emerged from her dwelling in his eyes and his mouth, his nose, his arm, his chest, and his heart. That immovable, imperceptible existence became visible to the creative capacity, Lord Brahma, who is born of the unmanifest, freed by her, the Lord of the world, the causer of being, rose from his couch. So Vishnu rose up from his couch on the infinite ocean of being. He saw those two wicked warriors of great strength, too much and too little, marching forward to attack. Red-eyed with anger and ready in an instant to strike, they continued in their endeavor to devour Lord Brahma, the creative capacity. Then the Lord, who removes confusion, Lord Vishnu, rose and waged battle with the two of them. For 5,000 years, the all-pervading, omnipresent, eternal Vishnu wrestled with them arm in arm, and they became frenzied by their own strength under the delusion of the great measurement of consciousness, Mahamaya. Then, they became frenzied, and by their own strength, under the delusion of measurement of Mahamaya, they got wrapped up in their ego. They started thinking they were so great. So they told the one with beautiful hair, which is another name for Lord Vishnu, to choose from them a wish. The Lord of the universe said, if you are so satisfied with me, then both of you be slain by me now. Let me kill you. What other wish could be regarded? This much I ask of you. This is Vishnu asking Madhu and Kataiba, too much and too little, because they were overwhelmed. In the Devi Bhagavatam, when we read this story, the battle is going on for thousands of years, and Vishnu gets tired because Madhu and Kataiba are two people, or two beings. And so one of them would wrestle with, plus they had this boon that they could only be killed when they chose to be killed. So Vishnu wasn't able to kill them. So one would wrestle with Vishnu for hundreds of years, and then the other one would come in fresh and wrestle with Vishnu. And so he was basically fighting against two people, and one or the other was always fresh. So finally he said, I need to take a little break. You guys have had a break. I haven't. So you never attack somebody who's tired. So give me a break. And during that time, he meditated on the Divine Mother, Mahamaya. And he said, what's going on? And so she actually informs him that the problem here is that they have a boon, that they can only be killed if they wish to be killed. And he said, well, what am I going to do? You need to help me out. I'm exhausted. And she says to him, okay, I will entrance them, and they will become very egoistic. They'll be so proud of what they're doing. And when they see me, they'll want to impress me, that I'll take care of it for you. So trust. So go back and battle some more. So he goes back and battles, and he sees them looking over at Mahamaya, who's appearing as a gorgeous apparition. And so he knows this is a good time. So he says, Vishnu actually asked them first, oh, boys, whatever you call them, two demons, you're doing so well. I want to give you a boon to show how proud I am of how well you're battling me. And of course, that just demolished them. And they said, wait a second, we're beating you, and we have no need of mercy from you or charity. We'll give you a boon. And so that's when he says, okay, so I'm asking for the boon that I can kill you and that you wish to be killed. And so they had to give that to them. But meanwhile, the second part is, so in the book here on page 142, if you're following, says, thus deceived by Vishnu, they saw that the entire gross world was covered with the waters of strife. So remember that Vishnu is floating in this huge sea. But here in this translation, it talks about it being the waters of strife. So they say, the two demons saying, seeing that, they said to Lord Vishnu, conquer us in a place that is not inundated by the flood of desire. So in the Devi Bhagavatam, they just describe it as a place where there's no water. But the long and the short of it is Vishnu extends his thighs and says, put your head here where there's no water and there's no strife, obviously, in God's lap. In Vishnu's lap, there's no strife or desire when you around somebody of that caliber. And I'm sure those of you who met Muniraj had that experience. Maybe you had some questions in your mind, and all of a sudden you were around Muniraj and there's no more questions. You're just content and happy to just sit there. And later you said, oh yeah, I was going to ask him these questions, but like none of that comes to you when you're sitting in the lap of the divine. So that's a beautiful. So anyways, he says, put your head here and cut off your heads. And then they made themselves, in the Devi Bhagavatam story, they made themselves huge. But of course, Vishnu made himself and his thighs even huger. And so finally, they lay their head, saying, let it be so. The glorious one who bears the concha vibrations, the discus of revolving time, and a club of articulation, raised the two demons upon his loins, and with the revolution of time, his discus, Vishnu severed their heads. Thus praised by the creative capacity, Brahma, she manifested herself. And that's the story of Madhu and Kataiba, and when he battled for 5,000 years. So that's a little bit different take on it all. Is anybody have any questions or comments? So who knows the moral of the story? Keep your head on the lap of the divine.
Yeah.
Which is accomplished really by doing your mantras and your pujas and things like that. And you've all had that experience when you are in that space. You're just one with God or with the divine, whatever you want to say it as. And like I said, but then the different thoughts come in, and this first thought that the battle is with is too much and too little.
I think I get mostly from it that we do need to monitor our thoughts, be vigilant with our thoughts.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Well, just remembering that, I mean, our capacity to think is a great gift and can be used well. But like you said, monitoring it. Is this really a thought of creating more goodness in this world?
Mhm.
Or is this a thought of ego and needing to be better, needing to be more, stuff like that. So as we go on in the book, we'll be reading about the thoughts of anger. And that's a really good one for me. but the first one is this too much and too little. It's just this me playing into the energies of Mahamaya, where she just presenting us with all of this, and she's the divine director of this play of creation. Yet, even though she's handing us all these different opportunities to pull ourselves away from the divine, when we show, like Annie said, when we monitor our thoughts and we realize that, yes, this would be a helpful thing to do, like you help the kids at Christmas time, collecting gifts and foods for the families. This other thought that I really need to go down to Ross for less and buy another pair of yoga pants and some running shoes. I'm gonna go count how many I have in my closet, and maybe I can get back to my puja now. But what Swami Saraswati says is that when she really sees that we're trying, then she bestows her grace on us, and we do feel that oneness and protection from her. Good. I'm glad we got some learning from that.
Yeah.
For me, what comes up is trust. That the mother always knows, and she always has our back. And so when we go astray with too little or too much or whatnot, to have that discipline and trust to come back to the source.
Nice one. Yeah, that's a good one too, for sure. She does have our back, and she also gives us freedom to
Hang ourselves.
exactly, to play around in the world of Mahamaya. Yeah, with our prayers and our trust that Mother is there. She always saves the day. So thank you.
So the Chandi path, sorry.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
I think what Baba gave us was so many rituals too that are the things that do draw us back.
Exactly.
Gets us on track, keeps us more focused.
Yeah, particularly the mantras.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no,
because anytime we're in trouble, that mantra comes up. I mean,
yeah,
it'll just come up. It's amazing how beautiful it will come up when you are in strife. I had an experience where someone was in real trouble, and we had to transfer her out of her car to another person's car. And I had to drive her car, following the other car, not knowing where I was going. And it was pouring down rain. And all I did was say Om Namah Shivaya. I mean, it makes me want to cry right now. All the way to where we had to go. We were able to get her in and take care of her. But it came like that. I got in the car. I was nervous because I didn't even know the kind of car, how to drive it. But the mantra, that was just such a blessing to me.
So beautiful. And that comes from, lifetimes of doing good service and practice. And even in this lifetime, of course. So both the blessing and the practice that you do on a daily basis, it does make a difference. Like you said, it really comes to help us. That's beautiful.
Keeps us focused.
Yeah.
Ramloti, I have a thought, if it hasn't already been addressed in one of the satsangs that you're ongoing. I know we're doing truth, simplicity, love, and Om Namah Shivaya. So the Om Namah Shivaya is happening when? Is that coming up?
I think that would be lovely to do. Tomorrow we have it on simplicity. 2 weeks from tomorrow will be love. So we have truth, simplicity, and love. And I think that one after that, which would be about a month away, would be very appropriate. I was just thinking about that, to have it on Om Namah Shivaya. Good point. Yes, so that we could really dive into that and read. Shastraji's given beautiful speeches about it and the meaning, and
Okay, so I mean, I'm sharing that with friends, and one of my best friends who I sent the bracelet to, it's like after I've known her for over 50 years, and she's now asking the questions of Om Namah Shivaya, which is like, oh, I never thought I mean, I've had hope, but she's wearing her bracelet every day, and she's a tough one. She's a toughie. But anyway, I think that would be so beautiful and
Right.
so fruitful. And the other mantra, the mantra of the mantra is, when in doubt, do japa. That's, I'm finding that helpful. The if we're still being recorded, maybe
yeah, we are.
I was just going to ask a question if I bought the correct book.
Yes, you did.
Because
Yeah.
okay.
And we're also using the Devi Bhagavatam. So we're using both. So this
But
is
this is Swamiji's, right? This is
exactly.
okay.
Yeah, we're just reading from, yeah. So the Devi, the shortened version, or yeah, we're gonna read all the time on the discourses online, because it'll give us a nice overview of what we just read in 1,300 pages. We'll read it in 500 pages. But then during the discourses, our study group will go into several of the stories more deeply in the Chandipat. Okay. So I'll stop the recording unless somebody has anything else they want to ask.